Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live and with yet another exciting and inspiring conversation with Nathi Ngubane, a talented South African writer and illustrator that is committed to social justice and education. We're here to talk about the incredible work of Nathi, creating an engaging and informative content for children. Today, we're discussing his book, From the River to the Sea, a Palestinian Coloring Book. Now, what an amazing feat and what an amazing initiative to teach children to stand up for Palestine, but also educating children on the importance of advocating for Palestine. Now, this is a really fun and interactive educational resource, and it is also encouraging young people to explore their creativity but also engage with the complex and emotional narratives of the Palestinian conflict. But good evening, Nathi. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to chatting with you.
I mean, I'm equally excited about this conversation because such an honor to get to speak to you in the first place. But to kick off our conversation this evening, you are incredibly passionate about merging social justice as well as education. And this book is the perfect compilation of them both. Can you talk to us about the inspiration behind wanting to put together this very beautiful coloring book?
Well, I've always had a passion for a human rights and social justice in my work, and it all really started in 2020 during COVID, where we experienced, the coronavirus, and at that time, I created a children's book called Duma Says, where it teaches kids about, the importance of protecting ourselves from COVID, but also at the same time, asking the question, how do we expect people who are living in cramped housing, um, how do we expect them to survive and thrive during COVID? So that was, I guess, the first material for kids that was aimed at writing for a cause. Now, getting to the Palestinian cause, I've known about the Middle East conflict for a very long time. In fact, I'm also a cartoonist for the Daily Maverick, and my earliest work talking about the Middle East conflict was in 2014 when I published a cartoon about the struggles of Palestinians. And now we have this coloring book, which was really inspired um, by the event of October 7th, because our lawyers approached the ICJ with a charge of genocide against the Israeli government. So, this again, just like we did during COVID, was another moment that needed to be captured. And the question was, how were we going to capture this moment? How were we going to educate kids about Palestine, the injustices that Palestinians have faced for more than 76 years? So it all came up with this coloring book called From the River to the Sea.
Thank you for sharing that wonderful journey. And you are an incredibly talented illustrator. And we've seen some visuals on our screen just now of the wonderful coloring book that we are talking about. And I think you've struck a chord. This is such an important conversation. And of course, we want our children to understand right from wrong. And we want our children to, of course, understand the conflict and, of course, the suffering and the genocide that is happening in Palestine. But it can be a very gruesome and a very difficult topic to bring to children. And I think this is why this book is so innovative in terms of the fact that it is able to communicate to children and educate children on the struggles of Palestinian people in a way that is able for them to receive well. Now, can you talk to us about striking that balance? When compiling this wonderful coloring book, how did you manage to strike the balance between, yes, advocating for social justice, educating young minds, as well as making it interactive and keeping it on a level which young children will be able to receive?
Well, in order to make the book accessible to the little ones, because that was the aim of the book in the first place, in order for it to make it accessible and, to consume such complicated and such a gruesome Palestinian history, um, we had to consult with professionals. We consulted with journalists on the grounds. we consulted with parents and teachers, we consulted with anti-Zionist scholars like Ilan Pape before we published this material. And writing for a cause really does require us to really do our research and make sure that our work is it's factual and we are not pushing misinformation. So, in the middle of compiling the coloring book, we wanted to also keep to the themes of Palestinian freedom, justice, resistance throughout the book. We wanted kids to feel a sense of hope with the Palestinian people. And also, it really is a story about Palestine. This is a gateway about Palestinians. And in the book, we start with the history and the coexistence that existed. We talk about the injustices of the Nakba in 1948. We talk about the occupation. We talk about literary icons like Edward Said and Hassan Kanafani. We also talk about what it means to be in solidarity with those that are oppressed. And coming from South Africa, we know that too well what Palestinians are going through uh, with our own rough history of apartheid.
Absolutely. I think that was very powerfully said and very beautifully said. And I think this is such an important message that you are communicating through the book. And what a wonderful approach as well, because even as an adult, I find it difficult myself to, deal with the harsh realities and the gruesomeness of the struggles of Palestinians. So I love that the book was able to capture the struggle of the Palestinians, but in a way that is easily accessible to the little ones who are, of course, receiving the information and the story that is being told in the coloring book as well. Now, when it comes to the unique approach that you've used in terms of storytelling, I mean, you've used a unique blend of narrative activities as well as illustrations to educate children and teach them about the struggles of Palestinians and engaging them in the conversations, engaging them in the content. How did you manage to develop this really unique approach that, yes, is educating children, but is also keeping them active and keeping them involved?
Well, I'm starting with Duma Says back in 2020. That was a storybook, no coloring pages whatsoever. And with this one, we wanted to have a different approach where we are not just making a coloring book, but also a book that can teach kids while they color, uh, can teach kids, can walk kids through, what it means, like I said, to fight for your freedom, what it means to be oppressed, what it means to be in solidarity with those that are oppressed everywhere. And that's what the aim of this coloring book. You can read the story, you can draw, because I also have a passion of teaching kids how to draw as well. So I wanted to combine three of my passions, and that was advocating for the Palestinian cause, drawing, and also writing, um, and to ensure that the book is exciting, it's fun. The cover, we wanted to make it very, very colorful, and in the cover also, we wanted to show our solidarity with the people of Palestine by having a South African child that I created in 2020. His name is Duma, and Duma really represents South Africans that are marginalized. And so the cover really speaks to the sense of showing our solidarity with the people of Palestine. So the cover had to be colorful, the pages had to be clear, and the content have to be enjoyable for kids to learn. And also, because when we were compiling this book, the first draft, we had kids that were hopeless, and that is wasn't the way for us to go. Palestinians are very resilient. Palestinians are very passionate and they're very strong, and we wanted to show throughout the book that sense of freedom and hope. And so, when a child closes this book, they will have a sense of responsibility to be on the or on the right side of history, and that is with the people of Palestine.
Absolutely. That was very powerfully shared just then. And I think there's something so important in the messages that you are sharing. As you said, as South Africans, we share so much of history with Palestine. We share so much of the struggles that Palestinians are facing. And as a South African child, I think that is a very important message and a very important sense of hope, of dignity, and of strength to instill in young children that we as South Africans have had to inevitably always have to be able to enjoy the freedoms that we have today. So I think it's such an important approach, and it's such a wonderful approach in terms of teaching children those very skills that we naturally have as South Africans, to stand up for justice and to make sure that we are always standing on the right side of history. I think that is inevitably what makes us South African at the end of the day. But in closing, of course, we can't let you go without, informing our viewers at home on how they can get their hands on one of these beautiful copies of the coloring book. Please do share all the details with us.
Okay, so if you're in Joburg, you can get the book at Book Circle Capital. If you are in Durban, you can get the book at Ike's Books and Beitu Hikma. If you're in Cape Town, you can pick the book up at the Book Lounge. I also have copies of the book for those who are interested to get an autographed copy. They can contact me on WhatsApp on 084 2029 205. And just to also add that last year we sold 13,000 copies of the coloring book in South Africa. We've sold about 2,000 copies in the US and about 2,500 copies in the UK, with all proceeds going to Penny Appeal South Africa Gather Project, where Palestinians are assisted with humanitarian aid. And in closing, I would also like to share that I have a new coloring book coming out due for May, and the book is about Malcolm X and his journey and his visit to Gaza in the 1960s. So yeah, I would like everybody to watch the space and keep an eye on that book that's coming up.
I mean, wow. Thank you for giving us the exclusive scoop on what to expect next. And I think such an amazing follow up to this current coloring book to talk about Malcolm X and his visit to Gaza. I think that's an amazing, amazing decision to make, and what an amazing initiative to put out. And of course, I have to commend you as well for, of course, putting your work out there, not just in South Africa, but in the international space, and also giving back to Palestine as well. But Nathi, what a privilege to have this conversation with you tonight, and what a privilege to be able to engage your mind and get the insights and information on the inspiration behind the book. And, it's been such a privilege to have you on the show tonight. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Viewers at home, that was Nathi Ngubane. I hope you feel as inspired by this conversation as I do. What an amazing, amazing feat to develop a coloring book that is fun, interactive, as well as engages children on the importance of social justice and educating them on where to stand when it comes to standing on the right side of history, and educating children on the genocide, the ongoing genocide that is taking place in Palestine, in a way that is fun and interactive and is accessible to them. Please do get yourself a copy for your little ones at home, and do keep your eyes peeled on Nathi's social media platforms to make sure you get your hands on his next publication. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.